The NFL season is not here yet. They're a few months away, but my guy Stu always puts out the quarterback rankings. They get a lot of attention and get a lot of people talking and questioning how he put this thing together. And why not just have Stu here with us today? It is Stewart Brooking, the host of the Morning Brew with Stu. He is here to talk about his first quarterback ranking that he released a few days ago, and then also a couple two other topics that I think are very interesting to us. Stu, I'm glad to have you back, man.
Hey, no problem, man. You hit me up about. We talked about this. I don't know if it was quite a year ago, but we talked about this. Probably 6-7 months ago, and you were like, whenever you drop your rankings again, hit me up because I definitely want to talk about it and those types of things. So yeah, it's that time of year again. The list is bigger than it's ever been, so I'm excited and it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it.
I'm glad you have a good memory because I know that I hit people up about things like throughout the year. I've been so busy lately that I completely forgot about it, and it probably would have dawned on me when you released it. But I'm glad you hit me up prior to that because, buddy, if you didn't, I could have. It would have been like 20-16 or whatever. And I was like, oh snap! I didn't get Stu want to talk about his rankings, so I'm glad you reached out and you remembered that very important conversation.
For sure, man. For sure.
Stu, I don't know how many you normally release as far as how many quarterbacks in your rankings, but I do know it's been a few years that you've been doing this. Why did you decide to start ranking quarterbacks in the offseason?
So it's actually interesting. I'm a big Chris Sims fan, and
Yeah.
Chris Sims, he has this podcast called the Chris Sims Unbuttoned, and he's been doing his top 40 quarterback rankings, this whole time. And when I first started, I was just doing it on Facebook. I would just, go through kind of, I do it off of his list because I disagree with some of the quarterbacks that he had. I was like, well, I think this guy belongs here. This guy's probably here. Those types of things. And then once I got into podcasting, I was like, Chris Sims does his top 40. Why don't I do my top 32? And it's just starters. So if there's a team that we don't know who the starters are, then they'll get, we'll put Pittsburgh Steelers starter or, Washington Commander starter, whatever. And then as time gone on, I said, you know what? I'm just going to rank the quarterbacks for who they are as if it was a depth chart
Yeah.
and I was putting together a team. And that's kind of where we're at. We're in the third year of this now, maybe the third or fourth year of this. Jeff's been with me all the way through. We've had a couple others, hop on throughout the time, especially the first couple of years. But it's been Jeff that's been holding down the ship the last couple of years, Jeff Hunt and I enjoy this because I go right out of the draft and doing all the film work for the draft into doing stuff right for this quarterback countdown. And then I kind of take a break into the preseason. I don't talk much about the preseason stuff, but this gives me a break heading into me coaching football and then the football season starting and then right back up again.
So you're still coaching in the fall?
Yep.
Oh, nice. I wasn't
Yep.
sure if you're going to still do that. I'm looking forward to hearing about that too.
Yeah, coaching middle school football again. I'm excited. I love it. Something I wish I would have done a lot earlier, but hey,
I bet. So when did you start? So you said it was 32 at first. When did you expand it to 36?
So last year I did for the first time what I called the first four out. And the first four out didn't count as the list, but they were the guys who were so close to making the 32 but didn't. And when we did the preview show, I kind of talked about them.
Okay.
And I thought about it and I was like, I think next year I'm going to go up to 36 just because I think there are some guys who need to be talked about in this list who are really good backups. And as we saw last year, a lot of backups played a lot of football last year. And these are some guys who I think if you have these four guys on your team, you should feel very comfortable if your starter, heaven forbid, happens to go down.
Let's get right into it, Stu. 36 through 33, and I think I wrote this down correctly. Let me pull it up. No, you got it. I'll let you go ahead and do it. Who are 36 and 33 on your ranking right now?
Yeah, so at 36, we have Philadelphia Eagles backup Kenny Pickett. At 35, we have Jameis Winston, the guy who I've been known to hate on a lot. We have Jake Browning, and then we have the now Las Vegas Raiders.
Yes.
Starter or backup quarterback. I don't think the decision's been made yet. Gardner Minshew. So those guys right there are the guys who just didn't crack the top 32. Some of them I think deserve starting spots. On the episode I just had with Jeff, I talked about it. Jake Browning, I'm surprised he's not in Las Vegas fighting for a shot to start. Or I'm surprised he didn't go to Minnesota and give him a real shot to start. Those types of things. Jameis is a guy who I think seen a lot of football, all those types of things.
Kenny Pickett at 36 and Jameis at 35. Those are two guys. When I saw it, I was thinking, okay, I can understand. Part of me, because I still liked watching Jameis when he was at Florida State when they won the national championship. And I know that's over 10 years ago. So, like, yes, I know I'm still in the past. But Jameis Winston's NFL career hasn't gone the way he thought it would go, the way many people thought it would go. He has had issues, a lot of issues. I I won't say I'm a little shocked that he's not in the top 32. And I am a little shocked only because I know some of the guys that are starters in the NFL aren't some of the best. Like, some of them don't deserve to be NFL starting quarterbacks because the caliber of play. Now, you got to have 32 guys that start. And so some guys want to get that starting role just because, like, out of necessity, like, hey, you're on a roster. You might not be a caliber to start for a lot of other teams, but you just what we got right now, and here you're going to start. But Jameis is one of those guys that I think, kind of like Minshew, if you need him to start, if he needs to be thrust into a starting role going into the season as a backup, he can do that. Now, he won't be amazing. He won't be undefeated. He won't win 8 games in a row, but he can keep you afloat until the starter comes back. I thought he would be top 32, but I understand why he's number 35.
For me, listen, the big thing is I said this with Jeff in the preview show, and then I said it last week as well, and I'll probably say it throughout this list. I've heard a lot of people talk about how the quarterback play is down, and that's not necessarily the case. There are 50 top 36 quarterbacks, in my opinion. There are guys outside of this who are very deserving to be 36 through 33 who didn't make it. Aiden O'Connell. There's several others. That Jimmy Garoppolo is still one of those guys who I think if Matthew Stafford goes down, the ship isn't completely wrecked yet. There's a Joe Flacco after what he did last year. There's a lot of guys on this list that didn't make the top 36. The reason I put Jameis there at 35 was, while yes, I think he has seen a lot of football. He has played a lot of football. He's seen every defense there is. He's played he's played in every offense there is. He's got a cannon of an arm. He can escape, not necessarily in the way that Anthony Richardson can, but in the way of Big Ben used to be able to do. Those types of things. He can push the ball down the field. The reason he's at 35 for me is we still haven't seen the Jameis that I was asking for when he was hitting 30 and 30, when he was throwing 30 touchdowns and 30 picks. I told Jeff this on the show when we revealed the list. If he has to start 14 weeks this year, if he throws 20 touchdowns and 15 picks, the Browns are a 13-win team. That's how good the team is around him. I'm not asking Jameis to be a hero. I'm not asking Jameis to play the risk it, no biscuit offense that he played with Bruce Arians. I put him at 35 because I haven't seen him take the necessary steps that I feel like are worthy of being a starter in this league. But at the same time, he's also a guy, if Deshaun Watson gets hurt, he may not get his job back the entire season.
What would end up putting Kenny Pickett at 36?
I think with Kenny Pickett, there's so much of his game that translates into today. Now, he can't push the ball down the field. His arm strength is it's not there at all. Like, I don't mean to be mean, but the arm strength just isn't there. The ball doesn't pop out of his hands. But you're telling me if I need him to run the RPO style offense, he can do it. If I need him to step in and kind of manage a game, he can do that. If the team's around him, he could be very effective. And he just so happened, now this didn't go into my ranking, the film work did, not necessarily where he landed, but he just so happened for him to land in the perfect spot. If Jalen Hurts goes down, they're still going to run quarterback GT counters the same way they do with Jalen Hurts. Now, is he going to bust it for 60 yards? Probably not. But the point being, he can run all those same things. And if the team around him is good, then that's why he can succeed. Now, that's also his knock. I mean, you talk about Pittsburgh last year. They didn't have a great team.
No.
And his flaws really showed. You need a coach who can coach around his flaws. And if you could put a team around him with a good running back, a good set of receivers, a great offensive-minded head coach, and don't ask him to push the ball down the field or carry the team, he can do a lot of things. That's why he's at 36 for me, because he still lacks in the physical traits, and he still lacks in what it takes to be a starter. But he's the guy who I think can carve out a good 10, 15-year career as a backup quarterback.
Let's go to number 34 and Jake Browning going to the Bengals. Now he's backing up Joe Burrow, and Burrow is one of the top. I don't know your list. I'm just going to say it. Top 5, potentially top 3 quarterback is Joe Burrow. I'll leave it there. We'll talk about that later on in the summer, Stu. But when it comes to Jake Browning, it's one of those things where he could be a starter somewhere, possibly. I think he's better suited as a backup. I'm not shocked that Minshew's in front of him either. And so it's not like I think he's a better backup, could be a starter, but he's better than Minshew. Like, I'll get to my thoughts about Minshew here in a second. But I think 34 outside of the top 32 for Browning is a good spot. I also don't know if he's on the right team right now that'll give him the playing time for him to move up the rankings to maybe the top 25 or top 28 during next offseason. So I understand the top 32, but also he may be here next year as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because with Jake Browning, what I really liked about Jake Browning is he isn't your typical backup quarterback. They didn't change the offense when he came in. They ran the same offense they ran with Joe Burrow. They were still aggressive. He still pushed the ball down the field. He's got good enough, if not great arm strength. He's mobile enough. They did a lot of boots with him. They faked the handoff play action boots with him. The big thing for him, I think, last year that I liked so much was you see a lot of it with today's quarterbacks. It's, hey, if there's a too high safety, coach said only read the left side of the field. If it's a single high safety, coach only said read the right side of the field. And a lot of that goes back to the college, style of offense that we're playing these days. But if you watch Jake Browning, and I brought this up on my episode talking about these 4, I'll talk about it here. One play that stands out in particular, if you go back to the Colts game, he takes an absolute killer shot from DeForest Buckner, and he stands in there and makes the throw to T. Higgins. But what you don't see on that, unless you're really paying attention, is his head goes from the far right side of the field and then the far left side of the field, reads right, and then reads back to the middle of the field where T. Higgins is, and then takes the shot. He's reading the way Tom Brady used to read, the way Peyton Manning used to read, the way Drew Brees used to read. He doesn't say, oh, it's too high, I'm just going to read this side of the field. He reads the entire field, and that, to me, is what stood out among some of the others is there's a lot of youngsters, C.J. Stroud, some others that don't read the whole field. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't have success. Stroud had a lot of success last year. But my point being, this guy reads the whole field, and I think he has a big shot of being a starter and should be a starter. Now, some things that hold him back a little bit, his arm at times can work as an independent contractor. What do I mean by that? When he rotates his body, his arm's not necessarily all in sync. Sometimes he's all arm, causes the ball to sail high, sail low, left or right, depending on how you're trying to make the throw. And I think that affects his ball placement, which he's very, very good at. But there are times where it does get affected.
Let's go right now to Gardner Minshew, a guy that we got to see a lot of football. Got to see him play a lot of football when he was with the Colts, and I thought he's a better backup than some other backups in the NFL, and we got to see that on full display for the Colts. Now he goes to Vegas. It's very weird to say Vegas and not Oakland. I know they've been a few years removed from that departure, but still, it's a little weird to say. He is a guy that I think in this current moment where we currently are in the offseason, he's competing for a starting job. And Stu, it wouldn't shock me if he won it.
Yeah, it wouldn't me either. He's a dog. He's a fighter. He's got everything you want in a starting quarterback. Here's the thing with him. I think he's better than Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell completed, I think, last year a total of like 46% of his passes or something like that. Like, it's not. He showed great things, but not enough for me to be like, I feel comfortable with him going forward. So, apparently, Antonio Pierce thought the same thing. But with Gardner, the thing with Gardner is he's got enough fight in him and dog in him that he's going to win over that locker room. He's going to win over that team, those types of things. But I said this on the podcast last year multiple times when he was on the Colts, and I said this on the podcast that I just did with Jeff. If I'm a Las Vegas Raider fan, I pray to the good God above that he does not hold on to the ball longer than 3 seconds because it's a 50-50 shot
Yeah.
that it's a turnover-worthy throw. It may not be turned over, but the DB may drop it or whatever. But when he is in the RPO style, he reads it, pulls it, gets it out of his hand really quick. He's fantastic at that. When he has to hold on to the ball and make reads and make the decision, you got to hold your breath because it's a 50-50 opportunity. It's going to get turned over.
Still, I'm only laughing because we witnessed that a lot in the desire to hold on to the ball, or and I don't know if it's the inability to process quickly, or if it's seeing something different post snap that causes him to slow down his processing, or maybe that's just the speed of his processing. I'm not sure, but we saw that, man. We saw him do those things, and we saw him. Well, his play caused frustration for us,
Yeah.
but also I think there couldn't have been a better there could have been better backups when Richardson goes down. But ultimately, you want a guy like that to be your backup. But as a backup, my thing for him and why I'm comfortable with him being outside of the 32, even if he starts for the Raiders, I still think he's better as a backup than a starter. And I know the top 32, there will be a backup or two in there. Like I anticipate that. But I do think for him going out there to Vegas, it's not a job he's just going to be handed over to him. He has to go out there and win it, which might lead to better play in the season.
Yeah, and this too, Jay, there are some guys in the top 32, I'm not going to reveal who they are yet, that are labeled on the roster as backups or who may be labeled as backups that to start the year that both you, I, and everybody else agree probably should be starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be some guys who are backups that Las Vegas Raiders fans are going to be like, well, he's a backup. Why is he above Gardner Minshew? Well, the point is he's just overall a better quarterback.
Right.
And if he wasn't on a roster with insert this guy here, then he would be a starter somewhere else in this league, but he's not because of whether it may be how he's viewed publicly, whatever it may be, those different types of things. Gardner's right where he belongs, I think. I don't think he'll ever get any higher than this ever again on the list unless he just comes out and blows us out of the water next year.
Stu, let's go right on to before we get to the next topic, how often and how frequent do you release the quarterback rankings?
So it's every Tuesday. I'm doing it every Tuesday once a week. It's four every Tuesday. So we did 36 through 33. It'll be 32 through 29 this upcoming Tuesday. So yeah, it's exciting. It's bigger than it's ever been because it went from 32 to 36. I started it a little earlier than I've ever done it, but yeah, I do 4 every Tuesday.
I'm looking forward to having you back. I want to talk about that stuff down the road to hear some of your thoughts and if I agree or disagree or just hear your analysis. I've enjoyed it so far. Looking forward to that down the road. Another thing I'm looking forward to, Stu, is the NFL potentially experimenting with electronic first downs and removing the chain gang. Every time I hear about technology coming into, say, baseball or technology going into the NBA or the NFL for these reasons, it seems a little weird. I know that we're in an age of technology and technology is taking over and technology is going to help us. I mean, AI helps people every single day. And so I know it's here to help us, but I almost cringe a little bit saying, "Don't take the chain gang away." I like those guys. I talk to those guys at games. Don't take them away. But this might be a need and a thing that the NFL needs to have to help the game be better and for it to be officiated better.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we seen where they have to pull the ball is close to being a first down, but nobody can really tell, and then you don't necessarily know where the spot is, but the ref puts the ball down. You're like, I don't think that's where the ball was, ref, and then it comes out and it's short, and you're like, okay, it's 4th down. I think, and who knows what all they could do with it, but I think maybe this could be one of those things where as soon as the ball's down, they'd be able to mark it where it's down, and then as well as where the first down marker is, and you're going to get more accurate first downs on 4th and inches and these types of things than you are right now where we are. I mean, I'm not saying technology doesn't make mistakes. It does, but us humans make mistakes all the time.
Yeah.
And we've seen it rear its ugly head way too many times and too too many big games. And I think if we can just get a little bit more accurate, I think that will help a lot. And I look forward to it. I'm with you, as a guy who coaches football. The chain gangs, they're always kind of fun to talk to
Yeah.
on the sideline, those types of things. So there will be that part, but I think it's something that's much needed because sometimes these referees don't necessarily always spot the ball in the right spot.
That's true. I think about baseball, and the first time baseball said they might go to an electronic strike zone, I was like, no, absolutely not. Don't do it. And I don't know if this is a way that they still do it consistently, but I know at one point in time, because I don't watch enough baseball still, I just don't do it. They still have the I know they still have the umpire out there. Umpire first, second, third, and home, and the home plate umpire is still calling ball and strikes. Well, if something gets questioned or challenged, there's a quick response electronically where it says ball or strike. Even before the Major League Baseball started that, ESPN's broadcast, they will literally show you on picture a guy's 5 or 6 pitches for an at bat against one batter, and it'll say, well, this is a ball, this is a strike, and they will give you pinpoint accuracy about where that pitch was thrown. Even in tennis, when things are challenged in tennis, nobody questions the electronic response when, hey, we're not sure if this was out or if it was in, if it was on the line or not. They could quickly go out there and say, oh, here is where the ball went. And even on the broadcast, they can show it to you there. So my hesitancy with going to an electronic first down marker, it's not as big as it would have been 5 years ago or even 10 years ago, because other sports are doing it and doing it in a quick way, and it doesn't slow down the pace of play.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think Roger Goodell, he just got an extension. I think that's been their big thing is pace of play. And I'm sure he's heard the complaints that baseball had about how slow the game was, all those types of things. They're not going to want to mess up the flow because,
No.
Jay, there's guys like you and Jeff Hunt and Mo who love college football and the speed in which college football is played and the way and that it's played. And they're competing. They're not competing with the NFL is not competing with the NBA and the MLB, despite how many people say they are. They're competing with the college football,
Yes.
with the NCAA and college football. And if they can get ahead of this and say, hey, we're doing this and it doesn't affect the speed in which you watch the game, then I think there'll be a lot more people on it. I don't think they'll do it until they can ensure that it will not affect the speed because they are competing with college football every weekend.
Do you think, let's go to the NBA really quickly, kind of this same little thought process. Do you think the NBA should try to utilize some electronic, I don't know, something electronic to make the game better? And I don't know. I was thinking like putting something in the basketball, but I don't know what you would track if you put like a electronic or whatever robot thing in the basketball. I don't know. But do you think other leagues should implement technology like the electronic first down marker to make the league better?
Yeah, I think whatever a league can do, you've heard the old saying, Jay, of you adapt or die. And whatever a league can do to adapt is important. So maybe for the NBA, it may not be something electronic, but maybe it's something we've been asking if they would do if they're actually going to do it for probably 10 or 15 years now, especially with people shooting 3-pointers as far back as they do are you going to add a 4-point line? Are you going to maybe move the NBA 3 even farther back? Different ways to advance the game just because of the way that we've seen, in the NFL, we saw offenses take priority. We've seen a lot of the rules change to
Yeah.
favor the offense. In the NBA, we've seen the game change from the big man back to the back center, turnaround, Shaq, Yao Ming, those types of guys to, hey, we got Steph Curry and we've got, Trae Young and we've got all these guys shooting threes from, the parking lot, it seems like. So, I think finding a way to adapt in any league is important. The MLB found it with the pitch clock. The NFL's found it with the rules changes to the offense, whether we agree or disagree about whether that's good or bad for the game. And then, I think the NBA eventually is going to find for them the thing that advances their game forward and makes it a little bit more fun to watch.
Speaking of something you just said about other leagues and the pitch clock for baseball, I want to go to something that's really a passion of mine with high school basketball, which is a debate that people have all the time. Should there be a shot clock in high school basketball? In our state, the state of Indiana, should there not be a shot clock? And I'm in groups on Facebook. The old heads will say, "Oh no, keep the shot clock out. Coaches can't coach it." And I'll push back and I would say I think a lot of coaches can. Some will say keep it out. The players can adjust to it. I would actually say a lot of them can. I don't care either way if there's a shot clock or not in high school basketball. But I think sometimes well, I do say this: the one reason why I think there should be a shot clock in high school basketball is because I think the pace, just like Major League Baseball did something with the pitch clock, which is going to help with the pace. I do think allowing a shot clock would definitely help with the pace of a lot of high school basketball games, and I think it would be something that would be somewhat seemingly easy to put in. Train somebody on it, pay them for it. Somebody figure out the electronics and to get the clock there and install it. The schools have a lot of this. Some schools don't. A lot of the schools have the money, or the state could fund it. But I do think a shot clock in high school basketball would be one of those no-brainer things to just keep the pace of play going, so things don't get stalled for 2.5 minutes.
Listen, I'll tell you this. I don't coach at a high level. I coach at the middle school level. But you were talking about some of the old heads saying how like kids can't adapt to it. These types of things. And the thing I'll tell you is this: these kids are a lot smarter than you think they are.
Yes, they
and
are.
and these kids can adapt to a lot of things a lot more than you think they can. I think they do need it, Jay, because how many times have we seen? I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen videos of it where there's just somebody just gets across the half court line and they're holding on to the basketball and they're just standing there, and they'll stand there for a minute and a half, and that's not an exaggeration. They'll stand there for a minute or a minute and a half before they even pass the basketball because they know nobody's going to count them down. And if the defense is going to play off on them, they don't have to drive. So I'm just going to stand here and hold the ball. And it does add for a bit of a sloppy style of play, a slow style of play, those types of things. And everybody's dream at some point, Jay, is to play college basketball. Well, let me tell you this, folks. At every level of college basketball, NAIA, Division I, Division II, NJCAA, NCAA, guess what? There's a shot clock at every level of college basketball. So if your kids want to go play college basketball, they might as well get used to the shot clock the way it is. I guarantee you, there's probably shot clocks in the AAUs. There's shot clocks in their travel leagues. There's probably shot clocks all over the place. But just because we don't have it here in the IHSAA, it's a little crazy to me. And I think eventually it's going to happen. And I think eventually you'll see the style. I think we'll see a more fast-paced style of play at the high school level, much more similar to what we see at the college level.
Stu, last thing here is something that when Indianapolis Mayor Hogsett talked about bringing a Major League Soccer team to the city, and then I heard there was some pushback, and I heard on the radio things might not – the way that it was originally going to be planned would not be the way that it's going to be financially, having to get a different investor and all that stuff behind the scenes. But it made me think, and I heard this topic a couple months ago, and then it came into my head once again when I heard Mayor Hogsett talking about bringing a Major League Soccer team to Indianapolis. Why not a Major League Baseball team? I understand the Indians are in a AAA minor league team that are in Indianapolis, and the stadium seats 14,000, and they sell out probably a few games a year. Really great atmosphere for the family, and it's really enjoyable. You're able to go out on the grass in the outfield and enjoy that. Get a cheaper ticket for the family if you got 4 or 5 kids. It's a whole lot better to do that than to go up there and get in the stands. But I think a Major League Baseball team is one of those things that would make a whole lot more sense than soccer. I think soccer is an up-and-coming sport, but I think the financials for a Major League Soccer team and just a lot of the logistics and really the popularity of the sport really, to me, make that if we're ranking them 1-2, make pro soccer team second, make pro baseball team first. But I also don't know if I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but it would make a whole lot more sense to bring a baseball team here than a soccer team.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever will. And I think the reason we got the Indians, if I'm not mistaken, the reason Indianapolis got the Indianapolis Indians is because we had made a push to the MLB to get a MLB team here in Indianapolis. But the thing is, and this is when you sent this to me, I was thinking about this. I think there should be because I
Yeah,
think it would go over well.
yeah,
But I don't think it will ever happen because there are too many St. Louis Cardinals fans that live in the state of Indiana. There are too many Cincinnati Reds fans that live in the state of Indiana. Too many Chicago Cubs fans that live in the state of Indiana. And there's three teams right there that you're pulling a big chunk of the fan base from that are in this region that are, depending on where you live at in the state, hour and a half, 2 hour drive from pretty much, the majority of the people that are fans of theirs. And the MLB sees that as like, well, these are some of our oldest teams. I don't necessarily know if we want to pull fans from them to bring in a new fan base. Plus, how many of those fans are willing to switch to become Indianapolis
yeah.
insert team name here fans? I think it's something that would go over well. This is a baseball state too. A lot of travel baseball is played here, and all those types of things. But I don't know, Jay, if it would ever happen. I don't know, and it's not necessarily the mayor, but I think more so it's the MLB. I don't know if the league would ever let it happen just because of where they're pulling fans from.
I heard that from somebody else. That same explanation that you just made, and I thought, well, that makes sense. And I didn't even think about other cities having two teams in them. Chicago having two Major League Baseball teams, New York having two baseball teams, New York having two hockey teams, things of that nature. So I didn't really think about that. But also, those cities are very, very, very big, like
Yeah.
huge. Indianapolis is not the size of Chicago, not the size of New York, not the size of Dallas or LA, not the size of any of those. And so those bigger schools, bigger markets, they can handle not just financially, but with the fan bases, the people, they can handle having two major pro teams in them for one sport. The only thing I would say is that, hey, if there was two basketball teams in Indianapolis, maybe, but once again, the city is not big enough. I don't think if there are the Pacers and somebody else to be two NBA teams, as big as basketball is in Indiana, I don't know if they could be like, hey, got the Pacers here downtown Indianapolis, got the other team on the outskirts, let's say Fishers. I don't know. I don't think that they could really make that happen. So I would love a baseball team in Indianapolis.
I will say this though,
Yeah.
Jay. Something, and maybe maybe the soccer team comes here, the MLS. I know we have the Indy 11, which is like a semi-pro team or some sort. I don't know what league they're in. So, Greg Rayshaw, please don't kill me. But I don't know what league the Indy 11 are in. But I will say, if an MLS team comes here and they have success, I think you're going to start to get notice from other leagues. The NHL will probably bring a
Yeah.
team here. Maybe the Fishers more so than directly Indianapolis. But you look at it, Jay, and you say, even at 4-12, the Colts are selling out. Even when the Pacers are bad, there's still a bunch of people in the
Mm-hmm.
seats. Oh, now they have an MLS team, and there's a lot of people in those seats. Oh, now they're getting an NHL team. We're not, but could happen next. And then there's a lot of people in those seats. It could be one of these things where the MLB saying the city justifies that it's a sports city. Let's put an MLB team there.
Somewhat justifying being a pro sports city, dude. I was just thinking about this, and I was like, wait. I remember there's a pro volleyball team coming to Indianapolis. I think it's going to be Fishers actually, and starting in 2025. One, I didn't even realize there was a pro volleyball league in America.
Yeah.
Two, Jermaine O'Neal's daughter is really, really good. She's on one of the teams. I think she's on the team in Columbus. So like a notable person in Indianapolis sports. His daughter is tall like he is, but also is really good playing pro volleyball. But they're getting a pro volleyball team here, and volleyball is not as popular as soccer. And so if they're getting a pro volleyball team for women, and they get a pro soccer team for the men, do you think, last question here, a pro soccer team for women could do enough and be sustainable here in the city.
Probably with the way that we're starting to, as a society, put our arms around women's sports, which is which is deserved and
Yes.
should have been done a long time ago,
Yes.
and those types of things. But yeah, I think so. I think it. But here's the thing, Jay. Like you've said, it's going to take the right star.
Yeah.
The WNBA didn't have all the attention it has until Caitlin Clark came through. And I've said this before. There are some of these sports that are not the three main sports in the country that have had to have superstar caliber people, some of the greatest athletes of all time, to come through to get even the slightest bit of recognition. You look at cycling, Lance Armstrong. You look at swimming. It's not been the same since Michael Phelps left. You look at gymnastics, it's not the same since Simone Biles has left. So, whether it be professional volleyball or basketball or soccer, whatever it might be, it's going to take a star for it to finally click. I think it could click here. But, you bring in a number one person in the MLS draft. I don't know who that is. Maybe they're a absolute superstar, and it's going to happen at some point. Yeah, I think soccer could be, women's soccer could be just as popular as men's. I think maybe we'll see the WLS. I don't know if that's the thing, the Women's Soccer League, whatever it may be. I think eventually they're going to see what the WNBA did, and they're going to try to recreate it and build upon this, knowing that at some point their superstar is going to come in.
That thought about Caitlin Clark going to the Fever is one that's very interesting because she was, I think it was the caliber of athlete, how good she was, but also the time. I don't know if Caitlin Clark, if she did this 20 years ago, would have hit the WNBA in the same way she is now, because there has been a bigger emphasis, as it needs to be, like you said earlier, on women's sports and highlighting women's sports and giving them the attention they deserve. Which is maybe bad of me to think that it wouldn't hit the same way 20 years ago, but they had Cheryl Swoops, they had Lisa Leslie, they've had Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Skylar Diggins. They've had a lot of really good, really good elite players play in the WNBA. None of them have impacted the WNBA instantly, as soon as, even before they stepped onto the court or got drafted, as Caitlin Clark did. So I think one is the caliber of athlete, the talent, but also two, the time we're in, where people are really just trying to do what should have been done 50 years ago, is to celebrate women's sports. So yeah, Caitlin Clark is one now. And honestly, talking about like adding women's soccer team, and let's just say that there's I don't know this. Maybe there's a pro hockey league for women in the country. I don't know. If there is, let's just say that she does a whole lot for all of the sports, women's sports in Indianapolis and Indiana. And then all of a sudden Indianapolis is getting this, is getting that. Why? Because people in the city are celebrating women's sports, and it's because of Caitlin Clark. So as weird as it is that it's taken this long to get someone to come in and make this instant impact on the WNBA, it could be a great financial benefit for the city, but also a great benefit for young girls, young women that really want to look up to some superstar in their town to celebrate, to say, if she can do it, I can too. But Caitlin Clark's here. And I think down the road over the next 5 years, we'll see the impact of her on Indianapolis, and as other sports are added to the city.
Yeah, and maybe the WNBA was already planning on doing this. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a big WNBA person, like as far as the intricacies and all that goes. But I didn't know the WNBA was expanding to Toronto until this year.
Correct.
And I'm not saying Caitlin Clark opened up those opportunities, but think about the opportunities. But maybe she did, and think about the opportunities that she's provided now. Another set of 15 girls, 15 to 20 young women who are playing college basketball right now, who now have another shot to play professional basketball at the professional level. And it's only a matter of time before their pay starts to represent kind of what she's bringing in. They're expanding the league. If she plays well, I know it's a rookie year, she struggled a little bit, but if she plays well next year to next year, maybe Fox, ESPN, CBS, NBC, Netflix, whatever it might be, dishes out one of those $1.8 billion TV deals that they're giving the NBA, and then everybody can get paid what they deserve to be paid.
You know what I would love? I keep saying last thing, but I got so many thoughts. I would love for TNT to find a way to still get basketball. And I heard they're going to do some sub licensing thing for college football, which I'm all for. Trust me, I would love to do that. Well, let's just say the WNBA, not W, the NBA and the TNT, they can't come to something, but the WNBA says, why don't we just go to them? They're already known to. Now you have to get that approved by the NBA too, which is still very weird. That like the NBA is sustaining the WNBA, so I don't know how contractually it would work if the NBA does not do something with TNT, but TNT wants to do something with the WNBA. I don't know if that could be two separate. I'm hoping it can be, but let's just say down the road that the TNT says, "Wait, look, we want to highlight women. We already got Candace Parker on contract. How about we allow her personality to help us keep basketball on our network and also allow us to celebrate and to pump up the women's game as it is. I watched more women's basketball than I have lately. It's a lot more physical than I remembered it when I watched it 5 or 6 years ago. So there's a lot of good basketball being played, and TNT, if they want to still get basketball on their network, go right ahead, get the WNBA, do one weekend game a week. So like a Saturday night game. So it's a highlighted part of the week. It's kind of like NBC did years ago with the NBA. And then you're picking this star, that star, this star, that star. That'd be another great way to celebrate and to really lift up how good these women are at playing basketball.
Yeah, and the thing on top of that too is we know this from being sports fans. The harder it is to find the game, the less likely we are to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now if we're diehard, like I'm a diehard Colts fan.
Yeah.
If you put it on Canadian TV, I'm going to find some way to VPN Canadian TV and watch
You
the
got
Colts
that
game.
right.
I'm going to find a way to do it, and I'm sure you would do the same thing for the Buckeyes, right?
Yeah.
But putting it on Ion, putting the games on Ion, putting some of them on just Amazon, Prime, putting some of them on it's hard for the older people in this world that maybe are captivated and want to watch women's basketball because of what Caitlin Clark's done. You know how many texts I've gotten, Jay, asking, "Hey, where can I find the Fever game, or what's the best thing where I can get the Fever game?" These types of things. It's hard to find right now, and when you make it more accessible to the TV, you make it more accessible to people. They're going to be captivated by it, and then maybe they'll come and usually that transitions into, hey, let's go see a game live.
Stu, it's always fun having you on the show. I really appreciate it. Where can people follow you on the social media and catch your show?
Yeah, the show is anywhere you can get your podcast: SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, it's there. Twitter, it's at StuPoc5 for my personal, and for the podcast, it's at Stu Morning. The rankings will come out on at Stu Morning every Tuesday, usually like 8 or 9 in the morning Eastern time. And then Jeff Hunt and I will have an episode. We will record the episode later that night, and it will be out the next day, kind of explaining the thoughts and all those types of things. I've had people see the rankings, not hear my thoughts, and then come at me about my rankings, and then hear my thoughts and be like, okay, you're not too crazy with what you did. But yeah, so look out for those. The show can be found everywhere. It's going to take up most of the summer to do the quarterback rankings.
Stu, I really appreciated you coming on the show. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next time we have you on to break down some more quarterback rankings leading up to the NFL season. Thanks for coming on, Stu. I really enjoyed it.
Of course, man. Anytime.